Hi, today we are going to discuss the broad topic of bronchiolitis. So, we are going to discuss bronchiolitis under the headings of introduction, risk factors, pathophysiology, microbiology, clinical presentation, differential diagnosis, diagnostic investigation, management, and prognosis. So, acute bronchiolitis, as we all know, it's a viral infection of the lower respiratory tract, which is one of the most substantial health burdens for infants and young children worldwide. It is mainly caused by respiratory syncytial virus and which is the most common cause of bronchiolitis in the infants. It is mainly present in indoor crowding in population dense areas during rainy season or cooler months and male infants who is exposed to tobacco smoke, who is not breastfed, whose mother smoked during pregnancy. And what causes this bronchiolitis is the viral infection which is characterized by extensive inflammation and edema of the airways, increased mucus production, necrosis of airway epithelial cells. So, this respiratory syncytial virus binds to the epithelial cells and replicates, which results in epithelial necrosis and ciliary destruction. So, what will be happening in bronchiolitis? The severity of bronchiolitis signs and symptoms, which will be depending upon 0 to 22 days. So there will be minute to minute variability in lower respiratory symptoms. Initially, it will be starting with rhinorrhea with or without fever. So initially, it will be starting with upper respiratory tract infection. That is, the virus infects epithelial cells that are left into the lower respiratory tract. So at that time, the lower respiratory tract will be normal. So what happens next is there will be persistent cough, increased work of breathing, scalene retractions, abdominal muscles retract, and a Rayleigh wheeze or both, impaired feeding, which will be mainly due to the lower respiratory tract infection because of the sloughing of cells into the airways, mucus production, edema with associated obstruction and air trapping. The ciliary function is impaired, polymorphonuclear cells and lymphocytes proliferate in an inflammatory response. Gradually, what happens is there will be resolution. New fever late course may suggest new co-infection, that is because of the otitis media, pneumonia or new virus. Later what will be happening? There will be regeneration of epithelium. So these all process will take 0 to 22 days. That is, the cell destruction triggers an inflammatory response with proliferation of polymorphonuclear cells and lymphocytes. The submucosa and adventitial tissue become edematous with increased mucus secretion. That plaques composed of cellular debris and mucus form in the bronchial lumen, leading to bronchial obstruction, air trapping, and different degrees of airway collapse. So, the main cause of the bronchiolitis, as we have discussed, it is respiratory syncytial virus only. And other viruses like rhino, metapneumo, corona, human Boca virus, influenza virus, adenovirus, and parainfluenza virus also present. The up to 30% of children with bronchiolitis are found to have co-infection with other viruses like metapneumoviruses, which will be causing more severe disease. The clinical presentation will be mainly it will be seen in the infants between 3 to 6 months of age. And some clinicians restrict the term children younger than 1 year and others extend to the 2 year or beyond. The classical presentation of bronchiolitis starts with symptoms of viral upper respiratory infection like we have told sneezing and rhinorrhea. There will be diminished appetite, fever, and that will be progressing to the lower respiratory tract infection as we have discussed. So the timing of symptom progression can vary and young infants can present with apnea. The term infants with the postmenstrual age of less than 44 weeks and preterm infants with postmenstrual age of less than 48 weeks can present with apnea. So the lower respiratory tract infections of bronchiolitis include persistent cough, tachypnea, increased work of breathing. Auscultatory findings include crackles and wheeze. The work of breathing markedly increased with nasal flaring and retractions. The hallmark is what we have discussed, minute to minute variation in clinical findings. What causes this minute to minute variation is because the mucus and debris in the airways are cleared by coughing or the child states of change from sleep to agitation. This variation can confound the assessment and often requires a several examination over a period. So, nasal also confounds the clinical assessment. Nasal suctioning might help to ascertain which findings are truly from the lower airways. The mean duration of symptoms is 2 weeks, with 10 to 20% infants still having symptoms at 3 weeks after the onset. DDs are absence of upper respiratory infection should arise suspicion of other causes of respiratory distress in young infants like cardiac disease, congenital airway abnormalities, foreign body aspiration. Other infections complicate bronchiolitis, and which is like bacterial infections complicating viral bronchiolitis like otitis media, pneumonia, and it might present as a new fever or worsening status late in the course of illness. So bronchiolitis is mainly clinical diagnosis. I'm telling you, bronchiolitis is mainly a clinical diagnosis based on history and physical examination. For infants with a typical presentation of bronchiolitis, routine imaging or laboratory testing is not recommended. So imaging, I have seen many people doing imaging, but in bronchiolitis, majority of the children with bronchiolitis have either normal radiograph or findings consistent with simple bronchiolitis. So in some particular cases, the chest radiographs should be considered, like when another diagnosis such as foreign body aspiration is high on the differential diagnosis, or when a child is severely ill and respiratory failure is imminent, and when symptoms are progressing or not resolving according to the typical disease course expected for bronchiolitis. And regarding viral testing, the PCR and rapid immunofluorescence are the methods, but it is not routinely recommended. Blood culture and urine testing not recommended. And regarding the NICE guidelines, AAP guidelines, CPS guidelines, as per them also the pulse oximetry, chest radiography, viral testing, CBC, blood gas, bacterial culture are not routinely recommended. The management mainly consisting of the supportive treatment. So when we have to admit the patient, that's the main question we have to answer. The criteria is respiratory distress, hypoxia, inability to feed, apnea, and extreme tachypnea. So, what's the case of these antivirals like ribavirin? There is no need because it is not recommended in practice guidelines for typical case of bronchiolitis because of the challenging delivery methods, high cost, potential health risk to the caregivers. So bronchodilators, we will be giving many bronchodilators, but actually the response to bronchodilators is unlikely and unpredictable in children younger than 1 year, and there is no validated method of assessing response in the clinical setting. Regarding nebulized hypertonic saline, initially it is thought to reduce airway edema, decrease mucus plugging, improve mucociliary clearance, and rehydrate the airway surface and liquid infants with bronchitis. Although initial trials demonstrated some ability of the hypotonic saline to decrease hospital length of stay and transiently improve clinical severity score, but the most recent clinical trials demonstrated conflicting interests. Regarding high flow oxygen and respiratory support, the non-invasive technologies to improve oxygenation and ventilation for bronchiolitis include humidified, high flow nasal cannula, and continuous positive airway pressure. Supportive therapy should be hydration, suctioning, and sometimes these infants might have a difficulty in feeding because of the nasal congestion, increased work of breathing. So the hydration remains a cornerstone of the therapy. Treatment, regarding the treatment also, these guidelines are not routinely recommending beta agonists, bronchodilators, epinephrine, corticosteroids. And hypertonic saline is weak recommendation for inpatient with the hospital with average inpatient length of stay more than 72 hours. And suctioning is not routinely recommended, but consider when the upper airway suctioning in those with respiratory distress or feeding difficulties due to upper airway sections. And we can do suctioning if there is apnea. Regarding oxygen supplementation, use if oxygen saturation is less than 92% as per NICE guidelines, and if not recommended if oxyhemoglobin saturation more than 90% without acidosis as per AAP guidelines. And chest physiotherapy not recommended, antibiotic, antiviral not recommended. Nutrition and hydration, which is most important, we have to consider regarding during bronchiolitis. So the prognosis. Much work has been published about the risk of developing recurrent wheezing and asthma following bronchiolitis in infancy. Overall, the admission to the hospital with the bronchiolitis at a young age is associated with increased risk of recurrent wheezing. So we cannot tell whether the respiratory infection at a young age itself predisposes children to asthma, or the first episode of asthma is presenting as bronchiolitis. In prevention, there are for high risk populations we can give palivizumab, IM monoclonal antibody to the RSVF protein, which is recommended in less than 29 weeks of completed gestational age and significant heart disease, chronic lung disease of prematurity children. So we should be knowing about the key points in the presentation is the clinical diagnosis with a limited role for diagnostic testing. Typical clinical syndrome like which will be starting with upper respiratory infection progressing to the lower respiratory infection. The management is largely supportive as we have discussed, focusing on maintaining oxygenation and hydration. So the evidence suggests no benefit from bronchodilator or corticosteroid use in infants with first episode of bronchiolitis. And evidence for other treatments such as hypertonic saline is evolving but not clearly defined yet. For infants with severe disease, the insufficient available data suggest a role for high flow nasal cannula and continuous post-airway pressure in a monitored setting to prevent respiratory failure. Thank you.